Graham, how did you find carnivore?
Well, like most people, I came via keto, but maybe in an unusual way. I found myself on the cardiology ward in 2018 with chest pains. Was there about a week, mostly being ignored by doctors, but had some tests as well. And it was very obvious what was happening on the ward. The chap next to me was diabetic, having his blood sugar checked regularly, but also drinking cans of Coke, sugary sweets and all sorts. And there's every morning a trolley came round with newspapers, but also with sweets and crisps, chips, if you like, and soft drinks available to anybody on the heart ward. And lots of these people on the ward, these older men, older fat men, were waiting for bypass surgery, which they don't do at our local hospital. So they're sat on the ward for 2 or 3 weeks waiting for their time to go to the big hospital to have their bypass surgery. And they're being fed garbage. The food is awful. It's all carbs. And it just, I've realized it before, but I really realized it then that the system wasn't there for me. The system was there for the doctors and their aggrandizement. Is that the word? That it was about them, not about the patients. So I spent the week using my iPad on the internet, knew this wasn't right. It just didn't make sense. Then I knew diabetes used to be called sugar diabetes, and it just made no sense. So I sat on the internet for the week, um, eventually found Low Carb Down Under, Zoe Harcum, Professor Tim Noakes. Tim was the real one. He fitted my head. As a long distance athlete, I'd been a cyclist all my life, until I got properly ill. And it just, he made sense. So I do a bit of history. So I'm 61 now. When I was in early 30s, I'd been a cyclist was my thing. We all have our thing. I'm probably autistic, and I definitely have a thing. And it was cycling for me and bikes and fixing bikes. From the age of 10, I'd be doing long rides out onto Dartmoor and from my home in Plymouth. Um, my sisters lived on Dartmoor, and it worked. It was my way, it's my mental health. It was everything really, because I loathed school. Um, Eventually went to college and got a job at a huge intelligence-based government department in the UK that people will know the name of, and carried on cycling, but the job itself was stressful. Had 2 tours to Cyprus working with the military as part of my job. And on the second tour in 1999, things just got harder and harder and harder. I was getting really tired, a lot of pain, and eventually came home early. And that turned into a job I didn't enjoy, still in the same department, but not a real job as it felt to me. And things just got worse and worse. I ended up using a wheelchair at work just as the only way I could stay at work was using a wheelchair. Went down to part-time, had a pretty miserable time really. And in 2001, I'd had problems with sciatica pain and had a back surgery eventually, just a discectomy where they chop off the disc that's sticking out onto the spinal cord. And since then, I haven't been able to do, well, pee or poo. So I've got a catheter through my tummy now and have to wash my bowels out. So that's miserable. People think that's horrendous. Actually, it's just life. Just get on with all of that. Um, been putting on weight all this time without me really noticing. Stopped using the wheelchair at work when I realised that using it, I was getting more tired and more pain, which seems obvious to me now because weak muscles hurt and I was getting weaker and weaker. 2006 ended up with a DVT and probably a PE. Um, Went into hospital again for about a week, and they, without really explaining to me, they started me on a statin. So this was 2006, so 20 years ago, nearly. So I was 42 probably. Um, Within 2 days of being there, I was hobbling around on a Zimmer frame. The statin just completely destroyed my muscles. It was dreadful, but the doctor just didn't know that's what it was, and they sent me home. I don't know what on earth. I can't look back and work out why, but I went to talk to the GP. Had a really good GP at the time, and he said it's probably the statin. So I stopped taking the statin, and within a week I was back to normal. That led to lots of digging about cholesterol and stuff. Realised then that statins are a huge problem. The testing of them is ridiculous when you look at it with open eyes. It just doesn't make sense. So that was my first real inkling that doctors weren't really there, or they weren't thinking as much as maybe I thought they were. And then I spent until 2018 waiting for doctor's appointments, waiting for people to come and help me, really. And then you go and see them after a week, waiting a year for an MRI and stuff, and they've got nothing. In fact, I've had a diagnosis of Ehlers-Danlos since about 2007. So you go and see somebody and say, "Yeah, I've got Ehlers-Danlos," and they say, "What's that?" So you go and see a neurologist, and they say, "What's that?" when you say you've got Ehlers-Danlos, and you're expecting this person to help you, and it's insane. Anyway, 2010, the British government at the time, in their wisdom, decided there was going to be a scheme for disabled people in the civil service to be strongly encouraged to leave on redundancy. And some of my friends were virtually forced out of the building. People who were doing good work but were disabled. It suited me perfectly. I couldn't wait to get away, and I did get away. Took the money and ran, really, and haven't missed any of it for a single moment since. Then started. I was already a photographer at work. I'd swapped over jobs. That was the one good thing. You could do different jobs in this department. Swapped to being a photographer, which was one of my hobbies. Turned it into a job, and then turned that job into a job outside. So I was doing some photography, some art, all sorts of things, printing t-shirts, but in a very tired way. Not, don't think I ever made any money, not really, because I just couldn't do it. I found a perfect way of doing theatre work where you go to dress rehearsals, take photos, and then go back on the show nights and print them for people there and then. And we were making, my daughter and I were, she came to help me do that. And we made a lot of money in a 2-night run of a local theatre company type things. But I just couldn't do it. It was such an obvious way for a proper career, but just couldn't physically do it. So 2015 came along. Youngest daughter was just going into like the senior school age. So it was the right time to move, and we moved to Devon to be by the sea, and that was fine. Um, Then I was going to say my youngest daughter, I mean, it's her story, not mine, but she's had mental health issues for a long time. And not long after we moved down here, she started disappearing in the middle of the night. And she tried to a number of times, almost successfully a couple of times. So a huge stress. But again, I don't want to tell her story because that's her story. But that gave me the stress of it. I can see it again at the time. I could see it, but doctors wouldn't see it. The stress of all that was causing me AF, atrial fibrillation, and chest pain. And I was in and out of hospital because where else do you go? You know, there's nowhere else to go but local hospital. And yeah, didn't get anywhere really. I just frustration. Um, Also had knee replacements in that time as well. I can't spent 2 years on crutches waiting for knee replacements and things and did that. So I was having a pretty miserable time. But anyway, ended up on the cardiology ward, went keto immediately when I got home. All the vegetable oil went. I haven't eaten pasta, rice, or apart from the occasional potato, eaten none of that at all since 2018. Still eating green veg. Um, Lost about 20 kilos, so that's 44 pounds in 3 months. A lot of that went in first 2 weeks in as water, I guess. Inflammation, instantly felt better. Um, it was just miraculous, really, how much better I was. I took a photo. We had a photo of me stood by the car from a few years before, and I went and took another photo of me at 75 kilos with 20 kilos of books in my hand that I can hardly hold up, and that's me without all of this weight that was in my belly, really. um I don't know if I was diabetic. Doctors certainly have never said, but I'm not a big one for doctors, so I try to keep away from them as much as I can. So that week changed my life, really. So I ended up volunteering very quickly, was bored at home and needed to do stuff. So I went and volunteered with the local police in 2019. So I was cleaning vehicles, taking them for service, um, making sure they've got all their equipment, first aid stuff, and is up to date. So all they had to do was get in the cars and go. So I did that 3 days a week. And then 2020 and all of that nonsense came along, realized it was nonsense very, very quickly. And a little bit of digging found that the PCR test was completely irrelevant. In fact, they were looking for genetic sequences that we know come from bacteria and humans. It was nothing. So I left the police after they started arresting people who were walking on the beach, and a young lady in Cornwall, I think she's an 18-year-old, was stood up in front of a crowd in Truro telling people what rubbish all this is and we mustn't go along with it. And she got arrested. And that was the final straw. So I didn't go back to the police after that. Sent an email to them and just walked away from that. So then in October 2020, went to work at Sainsbury's supermarket, so the local supermarket, and shopped for home delivery. So from my disabled, tired, knackered self, was then 3 days a week walking, lifting, and carrying for 6 hours non-stop in the supermarket and doing it very easily. We had a mandatory 15-minute break where I just went and had a coffee, and other people were noshing food and biscuits and all sorts. I just didn't eat while I was at work and never even thought about eating while I was at work. Just did it. Later on, that's turned. I'm actually working a bike shop in the summers now, which is much more suitable for me. What else was I going to say? So yeah, after all of that, things that you've mentioned before, other people have mentioned, have zero problems with my teeth. Absolutely nothing. I've got some more distant relatives who are vegans who are always talking on Facebook about their dental trips. I haven't been to the dentist since 2019, and why would I? Because I'm fine. I brush my teeth with, I don't use toothpaste anymore. Once a day, a bit of a brush before I go to bed, and my teeth are fine. They're white, and I just don't have any issues with teeth. Much the same with eyesight. It's definitely got better, even though I've got my readers on now. This is very unusual for me. Very rarely use them. Um, it's definitely got better. There's no question about it. I had a diagnosis. I'm not good at dates. It's not how my brain works. But I've had a diagnosis of serious central retinopathy or something. It's where fluid builds up behind your eye. Um, I've never heard of it, neither seen it since. Had a follow up after, well, probably 2022, and it's gone. And I've just been discharged from all of that. Um, don't wear sunglasses. In fact, don't wear my glasses really anymore. Don't need them for distance. That's changed completely. Another thing that is so obvious is that I don't get sunburn anymore. I live outdoors. I love being outdoors. I walk miles. I cycle miles, and I don't go red. I just go brown.
So you have been able to get back to the cycling.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Only my balance was rubbish. I had a tricycle, a recumbent tricycle, so sitting back, which was great. Bought that in 2019. I've been gradually using that, but it's very inconvenient. Had to buy a van essentially to put it in because I can't, I don't like riding it on the road. But think about, yeah, 2 years really now. Been back on the normal bike, and um, this last summer I've had 2 tours on my bike. So I did a 3-day tour locally, and it's really hilly round here, but with full camping gear. And then I did a 6-day tour in September, um, through Dorset and Devon, again camping. Had a fantastic time, and the bike's become my thing again, and it's just fantastic. One of the things I did as well in lockdown in 2020 was I walked on the coast path from here to Plymouth. So from my new home in Paynton, walked home to where I grew up in Plymouth over quite a few weeks using the buses, and people with their masks on getting cross with me because I wouldn't put one on. But had very little hassle actually with all of that. Um, and I did the last 2 days, I did 23-mile walks as the last 2 days, again on hilly coast. And that was amazing. And that's down to the diet.
So you went keto in 2018. Have you stayed keto the whole time, or did you transition to carnivore at some point?
Yeah. Yeah. I've been getting more carnivore over the years. I mean, I was probably not far off right from the start. My wife hasn't changed what she eats, except we don't do the pasta and rice stuff. But she has what I have, but with carrots and broccoli with it, essentially. And she still eats salads, and she still eats crisps and biscuits, which is a downfall for me sometimes, especially when I'm fed up. The biscuits are there, and it's quite hard not to. Um, so yeah, I've been carnivore getting on for a year. My The youngest daughter with her mental health issues moved out last January into what they'd call assisted living. So she's living in a house fairly close to us with other people with mental health issues with 24-hour support. She's much happier. And as the stress on me and us, my wife and I, has got less, my AF has stopped completely. Had the last AF in May last year, May 24, and been fine, absolutely fine since. Cardiologists won't say that because I lost my driving license due to a blackout last May that they wanted to blame on AF. And I'm having trouble with the cardiologist agreeing that I haven't got AF anymore, to get my driving license back. But that's doctors. So I was going to say something else. Yeah, BP. I've got a supposedly autoimmune kidney problem that I've had since I was 30 or so at least. Had really high blood pressure that's gone down with keto and gone down with carnivore, but still, according to doctors, is still too high. Take one low dose of ramipril, it's called, a day. Um, Anything else, even a higher dose, just makes me feel dreadful. All the other tablets I've tried make me feel absolutely dreadful. I had a water tablet. I can't remember what it was called, so I can't remember what proper word is for water tablet. Um, that certainly dropped my blood pressure down to 110/75-ish. And at that point, I can't sit up without passing out. So my blood pressure is what it is. And I'm very happy to live with it as it is because I feel so fantastic. Bursting with energy is I like to say, because that's how I feel most of the time. And I love this ability to just get on with stuff. The procrastinating part of me has gone, really. Went with
That's
keto.
a very big thing, right?
Oh, it's a huge thing. It's a huge thing after essentially 20 years of being sick and being happy's not the right word, but content almost with being sick. It becomes the normal. And yeah, I don't really know. Finding the words is hard, but it's been more than life changing. And you've asked people before, would you go back? Absolutely no, no way in the world. I'm going to carry on doing this forever. Haven't convinced other people, um, but that's their life. This is my life.
Speaking of other people, like, what does your wife think about this? Does she think it's a bit crazy, or she's just happy that you're feeling much better?
She's happy that I'm feeling much better. She's um, she's got depression and has had depression for a very, very long time. From the core is something that happened to her when she was a teenager, really, and she's never worked that through. Um, and eating is one of her things that which lots of people do, don't they? The comfort eating thing is a big part of her life. But she's very happy. For me, she's very happy as well for me to be going out all day on my bike, and walking. I walked about 12 miles the other day. Probably walk about 6 miles a day on average, just for the pleasure of going out of the house and walking. Um, so yeah, she's happy. Youngest daughter is still very much a comfort eater. I play wheelchair tennis. I haven't mentioned. Started when I was a wheelchair user years ago. Had a big break, and then as my older daughter has got older, her Ehlers-Danlos has affected her more. I've got her into wheelchair tennis, so we go and play that at least once a week on a Thursday. Um, so we do that. She's diet's a complication for her. She's she doesn't currently not doing any dairy at all, and um, so she's buying vegan chocolate. She doesn't want me to cook in butter when she comes round. She's been gluten free for a long time. And again, she knows what I'm doing. She's 28. She's old enough to make her own decisions about these things. She can see how it's changed me, and maybe one day she will. But I'm not a preacher, so it's yeah. So one thing I should have mentioned as well. I also help at a disabled sailing club, and I started as a sailor, so as a disabled sailor in 2015 when we moved down, and then I've slowly transitioned, and now I'm very much a volunteer. So I normally cycle there and work on the hoist. So I'm doing the physical work of lifting people in and out of boats. I see them as these are my friends, and I want to be the one that's protecting them. At easily the most dangerous point in the trip is the hoist into the boats. I want to be the one that does that bit, um, and keep my eye on everything. I'm quite good at standing back, seeing what's going to happen, and stop things happening. That's a big part of my life, really. I print all their vinyl for go on the boats, cut all the vinyl, also print T-shirts for them and things as well. So can I talk about lapses? So I do have if there's cheese in the house, I will eat it, and I regret it because it makes me constipated. I know it makes me constipated, so I try not to buy cheese, but very often there is cheese in the house, so that's a problem. Biscuits are a problem. Um, my wife eats plenty of biscuits, and if I'm bored, I get bored still. Especially if I'm at home on my own, it's very easy to go and get a biscuit. Still drink far too much coffee. I might decaf coffee mostly, but I still drink more than I want to. It's quite hard to get away from that. And I do wonder if I just don't eat enough carnivore, actually, if I'm not eating enough during the day.
Right. So what is it like for you as far as the menu in a day?
So I wake up early. I used to work at Sainsbury's from 4 in the morning till 10 or lunchtime. So I'm still waking up 4 or 5 in the morning. I have 3 or 4 rashers of bacon, 4 or 5 eggs at about 6 a.m. normally. That's what I've done this morning. We still have lunch because that's how my wife eats, and I'm at home with my wife. I'm not working at the moment. Um, but I have very little at lunchtime. So we've got I've got homemade soup at the moment from cheap lamb bones. Have a bit of that at lunchtime maybe, or some corned beef or tin of sardines or something like that. Um, and then we have dinner, and that's always again I fit in with my wife, so we have sausages or we have some lamb, or we have sea fish. We haven't got a lot of money, so I'm not a grass-fed beef eater. We just can't afford to do that. Can't afford steaks at £15 a time, where we can afford to buy nice fatty mince for not a lot, and that's what I do. Or the lamb bones are from one of the supermarkets that actually has a butcher's. They sell off lamb ribs very cheaply, and then I make soup or roast them in the oven. Love that. Um, I'm probably too simple. I know people talk about intermittent fasting. I haven't done any of that, only because life doesn't would make that hard, and I'm not into hard. I like my life as it is. I like feeling how I do. I don't feel like I need another complication. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, if you're in if you're feeling comfortable now and you're feeling good and you want to get out and walk around and like, yeah, I mean, there's no reason to force yourself to do fasting or anything like that.
No, no, I feel like that, and the like the one meal a day and things. I just don't. It doesn't fit my life. If I was on my own, maybe it would, but I'm not on my own. Um, so we're a family, and you live how your family lives. I do have I could do with some help with one thing. The cycle touring is being carnivore cycle touring. I've got all my camping kit with me. I haven't got a lot of space. I haven't got cool bags. I haven't got a fridge. Um, I've been I cook bacon in the oven, so I've got essentially dry bacon in its fat that I take with me if I'm doing like one night away type things. That's fine. Eggs are easy. That's fine. Been taking clarified butter to cook in, which is still quite hot in the summer because it melts and it's not ideal. And I don't really want to do olive oil. I just don't enjoy cooking things in olive oil. Just don't like what it's like. So I can buy sardines. I can buy corned beef. Just want more ideas, really. If anybody's got them, I have done. I went for a walk the other day. I got a really cheap pack of 25% fat mince, baked it in the oven in the shape it came in, so just a cube really of beef, chopped it into what looked like chocolate brownies afterwards with lots of salt on it and the fat, and took that to eat. So that's essentially dried mince with fat, which again is fine for a day, but is that all right for 3 days? I don't know.
So, yeah, if anyone's had any experience with getting ready for a trip like that, that would be awesome if you could share your ideas.
Yeah, I've got lots of plans. I want to do a much bigger trip later in the year if I can. Money's going to be the deciding factor for that though, because even camping it costs real money that we haven't got coming in. But then I'm not working and enjoying not working, so I don't want to feel like I'm being forced back into work. So, and we do get by on my pension from my previous job. I have got something else written down, mostly about allopathic medicine. That I don't remotely trust any of it anymore. I think everything I've looked into since the statin things has turned out to be either not true or it's based on an assumption, or we believe this happens rather than knowing. Believing and knowing are very different things, very, very different things. We believe in lots of things. And if you've got a chronic illness, the doctors aren't there for you. They are never going to be there for you. You have to do something yourself. You have to do it. I had to do it and I did it and it's changed my life. Um, there isn't an answer because all you do is wait. You wait and wait and wait to see doctors who either don't understand, don't care, and they haven't got an answer because they don't know what causes anything in the end. I've spent quite a lot of time looking into German new medicine, the work of Dr. Hamer, and it makes sense. Things like I used to run a fatigue support group when I was still in the civil service, and it just made sense. The people that came and I talked to who'd got chronic fatigue, ME type symptoms, they all had something in their life that was taking over their whole mental well-being. Um, Somebody had a brother who was seriously mentally ill, alcoholic, having a terrible time, and her whole life was worrying about her brother. But then she's also trying to go to work. And the chronic fatigue, ME, is your body saying, for goodness sake, stop, deal with this thing that you need to deal with. And once you've dealt with it, your body's trying to just tell you to, this is enough, you can't do this anymore. And I don't know how universal that is. I think that's a similar thing to MS as well, that there's people are stuck in a situation and their body reacts by physically making you duck and stop. Um, yeah, so I don't know. It's worth looking into. I'm not an expert in any way at all, but find it interesting. The cancer aspect of it is very interesting. I don't think cancer's remotely what we are told. I think cancer, well, each cancer is different for a start, isn't the same thing. If you've got leukemia, isn't the same as having bowel cancer. It's completely different. It's ridiculous to call it the same thing. And the GNM view is that cancers are healing symptoms. So you've already done the healing, you've solved the problem, and the cancer is the way your body adapts, either adapts to the initial shock of the problem or adapts back to make you well again. And by going to allopathic doctor who scans and gives you a diagnosis, that diagnosis gives you another problem to deal with. And what they call cancer moving around the body is the fear from diagnosis causes more problems that they then call cancer. So again, it's not my specialist thing in any way at all, but I'm not worried about getting cancer again, and I wouldn't be worried about it. I've actually did a little bit of digging quite a long time ago, and I've written to the local coroner to find, do people die of undiagnosed cancer? Do they find somebody who's dead and then the only possible cause they've got for that death is cancer, and they don't keep those records, which I suspect means the answer is probably no. So I don't know. I don't want to say this is the answer, GNM is the answer. I don't know. It's too complicated, but it's very interesting and gives you perhaps a more realistic view of the world.
One of the things for most people that comes out of eating this way, and sometimes it drives them to this, is just like realizing that we need to be asking more questions and everything is not necessarily as it seems.
Yeah, I think I would say even more than that, everything I look into isn't as we are told.
Yeah. So, Graham, if people want to reach out to you, is there a way they can get in contact? Do you have any social media or any way of reaching out?
Really, I've got a Facebook, very happy to be contacted on Facebook. I've got a YouTube channel, but all it is a bike related video for a bike I sold for somebody. But again, you can find me on that if you put the link down below. I think it's Graham A63, my account. I'm very happy, or comment on here. Especially if you live in Torbay in Devon and you do carnivore, want to do carnivore, love to have a chat.
No worries. I'll put your Facebook and YouTube in the show notes. Um, Graham, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, Dave, and thanks for all you do. It's been amazing, all of what you've done. I don't know how many you're up to now, but it's amazing.